Welcome back to another episode of the Pauline Chilton Show, where we talk all things real estate, entrepreneurship, and building the life that you want, one bold move at a time. Today's guest is living proof that those late night infomercials can actually change your life, because that's exactly how his real estate journey began. William Tingle is a real estate investor, coach, speaker, and the author of The 12 House Blueprint. In 1999, he ordered a Carleton Sheets Nothing Down course off of a late night TV infomercial. And get this, just 1 year later, he walked away from his job and started investing full time. Fast forward to today, William has purchased hundreds of properties across the U.S. with a specialty in subject to deals, a strategy most people have heard of but few truly understand. Not only that, he's coached and trained thousands of students nationwide to become financially successful real estate investors using his proven systems. Whether you're brand new to real estate or you've got a few deals under your belt, William's insights will open your eyes to strategies that are powerful, creative, and doable. Get ready. This episode is packed with gems you won't want to miss. Let's welcome William to the show.
Thanks, Pauline. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on your show today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you here. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is a subject to deal, and how does it work in real world real estate investing?
Well, subject to is really just as simple as, most people think they go out, a realtor shows them a house, they go to the bank, they apply for a loan, they wait it out, see if the bank approves it, do their inspections, go through all this process, and then hopefully in the end, they have a deed, they have keys to a new house. For me, if I want to buy a house, I look for people that have what I call problem properties. Maybe they're in foreclosure, maybe they have properties in disrepair, maybe they're getting a divorce, maybe they have tax issues, but they've got a house that's a burden. And I'll reach out to them, contact them, and talk to them about buying their property. Depending on the financing that's in place, I may present a subject to offer for them. And a subject to offer, they still deed me the property. I still get ownership of the property, but the mortgage that they qualified for, that they sweated blood for, that they waited to see if the bank would qualify them for, stays in place, and I just start making payments on that mortgage until some point in the future when I refinance it or pay it off. That's really how it works. The mortgage stays in place, and we get a deed on the property.
What do you do for prospecting and generating leads for subject to deals? Are you using direct mail, cold calling, or something else?
You can prospect for a sub-2 deal exactly the way you prospect for any other type of deal. Now, we've been doing this for a really long time, and we've really narrowed this down to the things that are most effective for us. That is targeting people in foreclosure, people that obviously have a problem with a definite date, those as well as high days on market listings right now. Somebody's listed a house, and really what we're looking for, let's just say the average days on market. In my market, the average days on market are 32 days. It's still a pretty jumping market here in Northwest Arkansas. So I'll go through listings and I'll see houses that have been listed for, say, 120 days. Now that's significantly longer than most. And a lot of times those people are getting a little anxious if they really need to sell. So high days on market, people in foreclosure, those are really the main prospects we go out and look for. But you can market for sub-2 deals the same way you market for anything else. You can do direct mail, you can use bandit signs, you can cold call, you can do random text, and occasionally you may find something that way. But I use more of a laser target focused approach. To me, it's more efficient. I don't have to talk to as many people, and I can still buy a lot of houses.
Once you find a potential deal, How do you approach the conversation and actually make the offer to the seller in a way that builds trust?
I think the easiest way to say that is we talk to sellers really to try to find out what the problem is. Anyone that's got a mortgage can sell the house to you subject to. They can all do that. Your chances really increase though if you've got what we call a highly motivated seller. That's a seller that needs to sell their property. It's a burden. This isn't just somebody that's looking to sell their current house so maybe they can upgrade or buy a new one, or they're just testing the market. Those aren't motivated sellers. The conversation really gets down to tell me a little bit about the property. Tell me why you want to sell it. Sounds like a great house. And you'd be surprised at the number of times people will tell you all about what's going on. Generally, by the time I have this conversation with a person, I've used some software that we use that will tell us a lot about the house. It'll tell us about the loan on the house. It'll tell us the interest rate, probably what the payment is. So I already know going in if it's a good prospect for a sub-2 deal. And to me, a good prospect means it's got a super low interest rate loan, which would produce really good cash flow in any situation, whether I use it as a rental or I do seller finance with it. But the conversation's really geared more toward what their motivation is. Once I know what their motivation is, I can present an offer where we take over payments. And by that time, we've had enough conversation where they'll either say yes or no, and it's okay. I'm not everybody's buyer.
What are the most common objections sellers have with subject to deals, and how do you handle them without losing the deal?
The biggest objection is going to be with credit conscious people. How do I know you're going to make my payment? And what I have found in those cases is just to be 1000% transparent and honest. And I say, Mr. Seller, you don't really know me really well. So you don't know that I'm going to make your payment. But the truth is, if I'm dealing with somebody in foreclosure, their credit is pretty bad. You won't hear that objection very often. Now, when you will hear an objection like that is like a deal we bought last year. We bought a deal from a lady. This lady had an 800 credit score. She verified a bunch of references, former sellers we'd had, and checked us out all over the internet. She saw our website. She looked at some other stuff. And she said, how do I know you're going to make the payment? And I said, well, I'm writing you a check for $30,000 to take over your mortgage. That's a pretty significant investment. So chances are I want to protect that investment by making that payment until I rehab this property and sell it. So if you're going to give them cash, that's a really good point for handling that objection. I wouldn't be writing you a check for your equity if I didn't intend to continue making your payments. But, this is all we do full time, so we don't hear that objection very often. But when you do, it's just best to be honest. Mr. Seller, you don't know that I'll make your payments, but for these reasons, it's a really good chance that we will.
That makes so much sense. So, when it comes to closing the deal, what legal paperwork is necessary in a subject to transaction, and how can investors protect themselves and their investment?
Well, you're pretty much going to do the same documents that you'll do in a standard closing that they do in title companies and attorneys' offices all over the country every day. A deed is the key component of this transaction. Your seller is going to deed you the property or your entity, however you take title, LLC or whatever that may be. That's, of course, the most important part of the transaction. We use a few documents that are a little different, mainly disclosures that make sure the seller understands their loan's not going to be paid off at this time and will make payments until some point in the future. Either we refinance the property or pay it off completely. But other than that, it's a deed, it's a HUD, and just standard documents. And you can close these deals at a title company or an attorney's office, but we generally close most of our purchases what we call a self-closing with just a notary that handles those. It's really a simple process, and when you've been doing it for a while, you understand how to draft the documents. That's not for beginners, though. Now, that's advanced stuff right there, but most title companies and attorneys are familiar with these. In fact, if somebody tells you subject to isn't legal, just ask them to refer to line 203 and 503 on a standard HUD or ALTA. It's built in there, existing loans taken subject to.
That's amazing. So after closing, what's your process for pricing, advertising, showing the property, especially if you plan to rent or sell it with seller financing? Explain how that works.
Well, when we sell with seller financing, it's usually a pretty quick deal. Our buyers don't have to go through the rigorous process that you do with bank financing. We don't require banks. We actually seller finance these homes. We do use a licensed mortgage professional to qualify them, pull their credit, just see what would need to be done to repair their credit. But pretty much everyone qualifies for us as long as they have the down payment and they have the income to support the monthly payment. As far as marketing goes, usually posting it on Zillow ourselves. The last house that we bought, we sold in 2 hours on Facebook Marketplace. So, offering a seller financed property, especially one that's affordable, I'm talking about just at normal interest rates. Most of our buyers, it's very close to bank rates, maybe a half, sometimes a point above. It just depends on what we need to make the numbers work. But we can usually sell those properties pretty quickly. As far as pricing, we price our homes at current market values. I've known investors over the years that would sell a $200,000 house for $300,000, and that's just not right. That's just unconscionable. We priced our homes at current market rates.
How do you typically manage these properties once you've taken over ownership, and what should new investors consider?
Well, our model is to sell with seller financing, so that means there's no management. We finance the home, we collect a down payment, we have a closing, and our buyer sends us a payment every month, just like they would Bank of America if Bank of America financed it for them. So no management's required there. Now, if you want to use a sub-2 purchase as a rental or a short-term rental or a pad split or anything else that you want to do with it, you could use the same management anyone else does, either some type of professional management company or manage it yourself. See, that's the really cool thing about buying subject to. You own the property just as much as if you paid cash for it or got your own bank loan. You can do anything you want to with that house. In fact, my studio that I'm sitting in right now is inside the house I live in that I bought subject to about a year and a half ago. So live in it, rent it out, do short-term rentals, sell it with seller financing, use it for a group home. It's your property. Do whatever you want.
You mentioned pad splits, and I've had a chance to sit through and listen to a presentation on how that works. Can you explain for the audience to understand what that is?
I'm going to tell you something. I'm probably not the best person to explain it. I'm going to tell you what my understanding of it is. And that's where you really just rent it out by the room, sort of like a group home. You rent bedrooms, and people talk about these tremendous cash flows. But I'm going to tell you something. One of the reasons our model is to sell with seller financing is because I don't like the whole tenant thing. Okay. And to me, I thought short-term rentals sounded bad. Pad split sounds like tenant management 100x. I don't want anything to do with that. But these guys are talking about some big cash flow. I mean, think about it. You buy a four-bedroom house, and let's just say your payment's $2,000 a month, and if you're able to rent those rooms out for $800 or $1,000 a month, I mean, yeah, it might turn into some decent cash flow. But I can't imagine the management headache. Imagine people that don't get along, people that get in a fight. I mean, just ugh, that's got to be horrible. But that's how I understand a pad split operates.
Okay. Can you walk us through a few of the most profitable deals you've done?
You bet. Uh, let's see. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the lady that had the 800 credit score. Now, that was a sub-2 purchase. And we talk about motivation in sellers, and most people immediately think financial. Somebody that's in foreclosure, they lost their job, but not all motivations are financial. Now, this particular property, Stacy was her name. This lady had owned the house for about 7 years, very well maintained as far as systems go. It had new central heat and air, a new roof. The exterior of the house was in really good shape. Now, inside's a different story. She had four huge dogs, and the inside of the house needed a cosmetic upgrade for sure. But she called us off of our radio ad. That's something we started doing a couple of years ago. This worked really well for us. She called us, and her motivation, my discussion with her, she needed a liver transplant. And where we live in Northwest Arkansas is about 3.5 hours away from the University Hospital in Little Rock. And if you've ever dealt with anybody that had an organ transplant, you're on a waiting list.
Mm.
And when they call you, you have to be there within a specified length of time. And I can't remember exactly what it was, an hour, 2 hours, but we were too far away. So she had to live closer to the hospital. And she was older and she was in pretty bad shape. So she had a huge motivation that wasn't financial. But she was stuck on a number. She needed $30,000 and she had great credit. She'd already qualified to buy a new house in Little Rock, whether her house up here sold or not. So that wasn't a consideration. So she was ready to buy her new place. We went out, we looked at it. We agreed to buy her house subject to the existing financing, wrote her a check for $30,000. She moved and we started rehabbing her house. So we took over her mortgage of 140 and gave her 30. So we bought the house for $170,000. We spent about 35,000 rehabbing it, so that put us a little over 200 in it, and we sold it 60 days later on the MLS for $315,000. So after we paid all of our expenses, we cleared about $72,000 flipping a sub-2 deal.
That's a great story. So
Yeah.
you've done hundreds of these kinds of deals. Can you share one of the most interesting, creative, or just plain wild story you've experienced with subject to deals?
Let's see, one of the wildest stories. I'm trying to think. I've been involved in deals where people were getting a divorce, and I remember this one. This was probably 20 years ago. But the lady that we were dealing with actually got arrested during the process because she had hired a hitman to kill her husband. Now that was a pretty wild story. And then there was the one here in Northwest Arkansas a year ago, where we were talking to the couple about buying their house. They were in foreclosure, and the deal got killed at the last minute because the SWAT team had shown up and busted him for selling drugs, and all the doors in the house were torn off the hinges, and they just really trashed the house. So you'll run into all kind of people with these deals for sure. But the hitman was probably the strangest one.
Oh, I bet. Wow. Well, William, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. You've broken down subject to deals in a way that makes them feel just doable, but powerful. For anyone who's ready to dive deeper or connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you and learn more?
You know, the best place to find me and learn more about what I do is my YouTube channel. We've been running that thing for a few years now. I think we have close to 800 videos there explaining all aspects of creative finance, not just sub-2, but other things, lease options and flipping and things like that. And you can find that at sub2tv.com. That's SUB, the number 2, TV.com. And then if you want to learn more about the specialized model that we do, which is buying subject to and selling it with seller financing, you can check out our new book. We just released this about 3 weeks ago. It's called The 12 House Blueprint. It's 177 pages of no fluff, just facts on exactly how we run our business. And you can get that at 12houseblueprintbook.com.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. If today's episode inspired you and you want to dive deeper into the power of subject to deals, you've got to grab a copy of William Tingle's book, The 12 House Blueprint. Go to 12houseblueprintbook.com and you can get it there. It's packed with practical strategies and step-by-step guidance to help you start closing creative deals, even if you're just getting started. And be sure to check out William's YouTube channel at sub2tv.com. It's a goldmine of free content, expert tips, and real-world breakdowns of subject to deals in action. Hit that subscribe button and take your real estate game to the next level. And to all our amazing listeners, if you got value from today's episode, do us a favor and like, share, and follow The Pauline Chilton Show. You can listen to the show on your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to follow us on social media so you never miss an episode. Want to support the show even more? Head over to thepaulineshow.com to donate, grab some merch, and help us keep bringing you the tools, strategies, and inspiration to grow your real estate business and entrepreneurial journey. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on The Pauline Chilton Show.